All right, this is Charles Douglas. I'm the executive director of Common Power.
And I'm Binh Truong, Common Power Fieldwork Senior Program Manager.
And this is with Common Power, the podcast where we give you a glimpse into something behind the scenes at Common Power that you may not know about, or highlight things that are going on that we want you to know more about.
So I think we've had a couple of episodes before, but this is kind of like a marker of relighting up this podcast. So it's a reintroduction. This episode, we're going to go more in depth about what that means, why we're choosing to do it, and also an update on what we're doing in Arizona with a work that just happened the past weekend. So should we introduce our third guest?
We should. We have somebody on screen here who we had to drag kicking and screaming into the podcast because he likes to be behind the scenes. Wole, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Wole Akinlosotu, and I'm a general manager here at Common Power. We're in the marketing and communication space.
Okay, and we're gonna dig into some more of that in a second. But you're here to talk about why we're lighting this podcast up again more consistently. And I guess we should explain some of what that means too, because I think over the past, I don't know, 3 to 6 months, we've probably done a handful of podcast episodes, right? Like every once in a
Yeah.
while, you hear Binh pop up in the field and do a show. You hear Matthew do something, but it hasn't been consistent. So right now is the beginning of what will be a weekly podcast episode from with CP. Why are we doing this now, Wole?
Yeah, I mean, to put it short, there's just so much happening at CP right now, and um, there's a lot happening right now, and there's even more coming in the fall. And so, to give some context to our work and shine some light on, um, what's happening on the other side of the organization, um, we're having these podcast episodes so that we can bring in some staff, bring in volunteers, and give some insight into what's happening. CP is a huge organization in terms of um, the amount of activities and programs that we have going on. So whether it's the Institute and the work that they're doing with educators and our volunteers to educate them, or CP Future and the work that they're doing with Action Academy and college
Mm-hmm.
students, um, there's a lot happening. And so not all of our volunteers in our community get to hear about it. So this is a place to do that. Plus, I know Charles and Ben, you guys have a lot of insight into what's happening on the ground in the field, with our volunteers, what's happening with our partners, in the different
Mm-hmm.
elections that we're in. And I think the people want to hear more from you guys. So um, that's why we're making an effort to make this a consistent podcast weekly.
Especially this year, right? So
Yeah.
2024, huge electoral year, a lot to talk about, especially in field work. A lot of people, dozens, hundreds of people from CP traveling all around the country. So part of this content is going to be us out in the field. Now, today we're here in Seattle at our offices downtown, but next week we're going to be in Texas, and you'll be hearing from Ben and I live from the ground in Houston, Texas. That actually just got done, or not got done. Man, just went through a massive storm and is trying to recuperate from that. And also will hold a runoff election for a Democratic primary on Tuesday. So that's just one element. We're going to Arizona 3 times this summer. We're going to Nevada also this summer, and that's all before the fall. Um, when you when Wooly asked you to come on board, Ben, what do you is that what you saw your primary contribution as, or was it more than just field work?
I think it's more than just field work. It is my primary contribution, right? Because that is the department I'm most heavily involved in. But I will say that,
That's the department you run. Let's just be
yeah, okay.
completely
Okay.
clear about that. Okay. Wole runs marketing and you run fieldwork.
Right.
All right.
Yes. So yeah, that will organically and naturally be a part of everything I say and like kind of like give insights to you on this podcast, right? But it is definitely a with CP podcast, so we'll be talking to just more than just field work. I think that two things here is that like Charles and I are not just on fieldwork trips, we just happen to be around in all the other places too, just like preview down the line here, right? You're going to hear from us live at the Educator Symposium in July. You're going to hear from us when we're having our nonviolence training with Dr. Bernard Lafayette. You're also going to hear from us like when we're just like in it, when we're just in it. And that's kind of like what you're getting from this podcast as well, is you're getting a glimpse into what it is like to be with us anywhere in the work that we do.
We're going to a national conference for our industry, where Dr. Scott's going to be leading the panel in Baltimore.
Yeah, Netroots Nation. That's right.
Netroots Nation. Yep. And then
Yeah,
we'll
and
be with all the teams out in the field.
that's right. So it's definitely this holistic view that you might not get just like from our socials or like through our blog or just like on the volunteer Slack. So there's that. And then the second thing too is that I think this is Wole's not our first and last. He is our first, but he's not our last guest, right? So while Charles and I are kind of like the consistent voices here, we're also pulling in people in our organization, in our ecosystem to talk more about what they do. So for
Yeah.
example, in about 2 weeks, you're going to hear from our CP Future team because we're flying all of the Action Academy crew leads to Seattle for a retreat. So
Mhm.
it's like these almost like deep dive into like these parts of CP that you normally don't get.
Yeah. Well, can you talk about that a little bit? Because one of the things that you are rolling out right now is hearing more from our community members, our volunteers in different ways. And so, can you talk about that program and where people are going to be seeing that content here soon?
Yeah. So we've been working with some talented um, videographers and media personnel. Shout out to Nagin, and just taking time to pull our volunteers to the side during our canvassing trips and talk about their experiences. Um, so we call this our interaction um, series, where we're talking to our volunteers about the interactions that they're having at the doors. And
Mhm.
um, these are all videos that are, really short and digestible, easy to watch and look through on social media. So if you do want to check them out, just go to any of our pages at Our Common Power, and you'll be able to see these videos. But I love doing these videos because they're not super highly produced. We're not like taking a bunch of time. We're literally pulling people aside after they've knocked on doors for an hour or two and asking them to share what they've been observing and the experience that they've had so far. Um, and it's been great to see like just the different reactions from our volunteers and also the common through line in the stories that they're telling of what they've been seeing at the doors. So yeah, if you're ever wondering what are they doing on the ground, uh,
Mhm.
what is it like to knock on a stranger's door in the middle of a state across the nation? Those interaction videos are the perfect place to see what it looks like and what our volunteers are going through. But outside of that, we've also just been doing like um, interviews and asking our volunteers to share their experiences of traveling with CP, and we've done that in written form, and you can also see that on our blog. That's through our Volunteer Voices series that we're doing, and like I said, that's on social media too. But you can find
Well, the blog is on the website, right? The blog's on the
yeah,
website.
yeah, sorry, but you can see like the post on social media about the blog. But if you want to actually see the blog and read the full features, they're on our website. And yeah, that's another in-depth way to see what it's like to travel with CP and what our volunteers are getting out of it. Um,
Okay,
So
that's awesome. And I gotta, so now I get to do this because I'm the executive director, and I guess I can just pull this in a podcast taping. But can we get a version of those videos, the short snippet videos? Can we get a version of those on YouTube?
oh yeah, yeah.
Like the full version?
Yeah, no, I would love to put them together, actually.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's
All
the
right.
plan, to eventually put them together, and then from there you would actually be able to see the common story that's being told between our
Hmm.
volunteers, but also, the unique experiences that they're having on the ground. So yes, that is coming soon.
Okay. That's cool. Okay, so I just invented a new feature of this podcast where I'm gonna like put CP people on the spot and ask for stuff, ask for cool shit for the community. So there's one thing.
Great, great. Yeah, sounds
Can I pull us in a different direction though? Um,
Sure.
okay. So I think that like, well, like you're kind of like speaking to the end product here of like these volunteer voices, this campaign, and like the way
yeah.
gathering the story. I kind of want to talk about like how it got started. So like when Wole and I were talking about this, like we were really diving into like not only what is the volunteer experience, but what is the real voter experience, right? It's like the idea of like your idea of a voter in your head is not the voter that we talk to when we're volunteering. And some of the through line that you'll see when you're reading these stories, when you're seeing these videos that we're capturing on the ground, is a volunteer having their biases challenged. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like from a fieldwork perspective, like going on all these trips and like talking to volunteers, having debrief, like we noticed this, right? And so, and like we figured that like maybe other people need to hear this as well. And
Yeah.
I think that this is also a through line to this podcast because when we were talking about this podcast, we were talking about what it is not. Like, it's not a political analysis podcast. It is
Right.
not going to give you like techniques for how to survive election 2024, you know? And it's also like not about like what's happening in the country and like where is it going to go and like all of that stuff. But it will tell you how real voters are feeling and experiencing this election that they live through.
Mhm. Yeah, in
And
some ways, it'll be an
yeah,
antidote to the other podcasts and the other and media that you're listening to, where a ton of people are analyzing things that they know nothing about, or it's all about a lot of summaries and a lot of data and not a ton of human interaction. And I love that because what you can count on from CP is human interaction first, not just between us as a community, which you feel and you see it, but also with voters at the doors, where you get the real truth about what people think in this country.
Yeah. Yeah, I like our emphasis, especially in this time, on human interaction and action. Um, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that a through line that you see in all of our trips and our volunteer experiences is the fact that um, people are tired of just like listening to the negative analysis and the doom and gloom of politics, and um, they're tired of doing that on their own. They want to be able to talk through these things with the community. Um, and then even more importantly, they want to be a part of the solution. And so, being at CP, it's like that. It's a step for them. It's a community of people who are willing to go out of their way, buy a ticket, or even just go out in their backyard, like we do here in Washington, and take action and go out and talk to voters. And so when you're in the middle of taking action and you're talking with people at their doors, you get a brand new perspective of like what the political what the political spirit is actually like and what people
Mm-hmm.
are actually thinking, versus being told by commentators and specialists about, what Americans are thinking. So
Yeah,
I love our emphasis on action and um, community here.
that's good, and that part of that messaging is what you've helped to craft over the years. Okay, before we transition into this next piece, because one of the other things that we promised you Wole is that we keep these short. But before we transition to this other piece, speaking of the messaging that you helped to craft over the years, I gotta ask you a personal question because I think that that's also going to be a feature of this podcast. Um, you've been here since 2019.
Yeah.
You were the first person that I hired on in 2019 to work with me on a project that we called CP Next, where we tried to recruit what was then the young generation coming out of college, which were millennials, which lasted for about a year until the Gen Zs showed up. Um, but you've been here for a long time, and you're a young Black man in a community of people that is not a bunch of young Black men. Um, what what is what's one reason why you decided to stay on board? Why are you still with Common Power?
Um, well, the main reason why I chose to come on board was because of the vision that you set out to invest in the next generation of leaders.
Hmm.
So you brought me on to work on that with CP Next, and I feel like I was also a part of that next generation of leaders that was
Yep.
being invested in, and so um, to be a part of an organization that talks about the next generation and the importance of them and their ideas, their empowerment, is one thing. And then to be a part of an organization that puts resources, money, um, time, and effort towards that goal, um, I think is pretty rare. And
Hmm.
it's a reason why I've stayed. I think that's one of the most radical things that we do. Um, and it doesn't always go right. It's not always a smooth operation, but uh,
Hmm.
it's worth the investment. And I've I've seen people's lives change because of that investment. So that's what pushes me through. And then with that same mission, I'm able to do the same and empower the communities that I'm a part of. And it doesn't always, in the work that I do, it doesn't always align with getting people to the field and knocking on doors like CP's core mission, but um, it helps to build the community um,
Yeah.
and it fulfills another initial goal of investing in our young people. And so, yeah, when I get those opportunities to do projects like Next Step or the CP Studio, uh,
Hmm.
those are things that like fulfill my personal interests and goals. And CP has invested in that. So that's been a core reason of why I've stayed so long.
Love that. Love that. That's good, man. And it's yeah, like we said, we're about winning today and all the fights that we're in today, and we're about the ones that are going to be here in the future. And we got to invest in the next generation if we're going to continue this fight. If we're going to keep fighting for decades to come.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now something fun to end with. Ben, you got an idea for a one thing to end, and we'll go around. You want to introduce it?
Yes, so originally this segment was supposed to feature questions from the community. We have asked, no one has submitted. So we have come up with one ourselves this week. If you want a question to be featured in this segment, please go to our volunteer Slack and put something in there. And
That's
we will
right.
talk about how to do that in just a second. But yes, the fun and lighthearted way to end this. The question for this week is, what is one thing you don't leave without when you go on a CP trip? What is something that you always pack when you travel?
Okay,
I guess
you're gonna
mine,
start?
I guess, yeah. I always pack multiple bags. So like I like to have options to hold my things. I have like a big backpack, but then I also have like a small canvassing bag, and sometimes I have an over the shoulder bag. Cause like it's really awkward to like go from the field to a dinner to an election day party with just one bag because it doesn't fit the circumstances.
Mm.
So that's mine.
So you have your regular suitcases and stuff, and then you have like empty bags inside of them.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Okay. Wole, what's yours, man?
Uh, I feel like mine is too similar to Ben's, but a fanny pack.
Ooh,
Yeah,
okay.
just I need a fanny pack at all times to carry the um okay, so in addition to a fanny pack, I would say a portable battery. That is mandatory
Um,
because I'm usually out there taking pictures and video, and
mhm.
if I'm knocking on doors, then minivan completely sucks our energy. Minivan is the program we use um to canvas doors. And
That's
so
right.
yeah, that kills my battery at all times. So I always carry a portable charger.
Okay. All
How
right.
about you?
My one thing is this right here. If you're watching this video right here, this is my one thing I take on every single trip. And this is it's a coffee thermos from Collectivo, which um, is a coffee chain, a local coffee chain in Milwaukee, which is the first place I ever knocked on doors for CP. And I take this thing on all the learning tours I go on and all of the door knocking trips. And I put some hot coffee in here and it keeps it warm for hours. And I love this. If I don't have this, if you ever see me at half capacity in the field, it's probably because I can't find this thing and I've lost it. And this is actually the third one I've had to buy. And the last time I had to replace it, I had to go to Milwaukee to do it. So I had to go on a door knocking trip just to get another one of these because I need my coffee. All right.
It's your third one. You lost two
Hey,
already.
hey, you know what? This is not a podcast about analyzing my habit of losing things. All
Hey,
right.
if you can introduce stuff, I can too, you know.
True. This is true. All right. Yeah, that's
Okay.
good. This is why I've been this year on the podcast is to poke holes in any bullshit that I present. All right. Okay. So we've got action items for people. We're going to close up with those. What do we want people to know, Ben?
You should join our volunteer Slack. So if you go into our website, and I think if you scroll down on our homepage, I believe it is the volunteer community, Wole, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And so you can find that there. And if you click that, it'll give you information about what it is and how to join. This is where our community gathers when we're not in person, right? Like this is like we have channels, we have like places for people to share information. Like shout out to the people who are already on there. You may see names like Miss Faye Dansby or Miss
Mm,
Betty McNeil, right? Just dropping
mm.
in highlights civically, politically, action from like XYZ, all of the place. So if you feel like you're missing something, like you're missing you want something beyond the newsletter or like a community meeting or like a Zoom, you got to join the volunteer community. You got to get on Slack. And Slack is not like I'm not working. Slack is the name of the platform of our volunteer community. So
That's right. That's
yes.
right. That's an important detail. Slack is the name of the company and the software platform that runs the communication tool that we use. Yes. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And our next I don't wait, when is this podcast going out? We don't know yet, right? All
Going
right.
out tomorrow.
It's going out tomorrow. Okay. This podcast is gonna roll out on Friday, the 24th of May. The next one's gonna roll out next week. Be ready for that. We are headed to Texas, and then we've got people going to Arizona, and in a month or so, we're going to Nevada. So CP is on the move, y'all. Get on board, join the Slack, read the volunteer guide, and figure out how to hit the doors with us. We'll see you out there.
All right. Peace.
Goodbye.